I want to head over to Brussels now. We've got a correspondent, Usama bin Javad, joining us there. A lot of European countries kind of torn in one respect because they want to perhaps support the action against Iran by the US and Israel at the same time. They have concerns about the legitimacy of the action. And of course, there are growing fears of an energy crisis in Europe.
Absolutely, and all of that is compounding this trying snowball into coming up with a unified response to what the Europeans want out of this. You've seen this morning the comments from the EU Council President, as well as the French President, about solidarity with the Spaniards after the embargo that was hinted by the US President. To discuss this further, we have with us the Foreign Minister of Belgium, Mr. Maxime Prevot. Thank you very much for taking the time. Let's talk about why is it that Europe is struggling to come up with a unified response, and how do you take this whole saga about the US hinting at a trade embargo on Spain?
Well, first of all, I would like to mention that we all have interests in the Middle East regaining stability and security. And tomorrow we will have an important meeting between all the foreign ministers of the European Union with the foreign minister of the Gulf Cooperative Councils. So that's really important, being able to discuss with our counterparts of the Gulf region, of Jordan, in order to identify how we can support each other and try to achieve a peace result, a ceasefire, as soon as possible. We advocated for de-escalation, of course, in order to avoid other new casualties. It creates many damages, many people already killed. So I think that the attack launched by the US and Israel, we all know that are not aligned with the standards of international law, but it is true that in the same time, the way Iran responded and is still respond with many attacks against all the neighbors in the region doesn't fit with the international law. We have tried for many years, thanks to the diplomacy, to achieve a result and avoid such a crisis. We, the EU, the United States and the E3, we have tried to achieve a solution thanks to the diplomacy, and I would like to commend all the efforts made by Oman. But finally, we've not the result we hoped at that time. But it is true that we absolutely need to avoid to create a destabilization of the whole region.
Well, we're currently in that destabilization phase. How do you feel that Europe was left out of all of this decision-making? Remember, the JCPOA was essentially a European project, but America was on board. Now, throughout this negotiation that was happening, the Europeans were not consulted. And even in this military action, which you say that is unlawful. So where does Europe stand, and can Europe actually play a role rather than just expressing its wishes that it should be de-escalated?
But even if it is not complying with the standards of the international law, frankly speaking, as I mentioned in the Belgian parliament, I understand why the US and Israel have launched these attacks. Frankly speaking, Iran was not a model student regarding the respect of international law, with a lot of threats against its own population, responding to all manifestations with violence, with torture. We know that they've continued to develop the ballistic program, also the nuclear weapons program. So it was time to say stop to the way Iran was managing its country. And
via unilateral strikes, is that what you're saying?
but by action, because the diplomacy has demonstrated also its limits in this situation. And of course, we are for a long time a long-standing defender of the international law and multilateralism. And it is really important to pay attention to the UN Charter and to de-escalate in order to let the diplomacy take the lead again. But at the same point, it was not possible to achieve the result expected. And I think that the aspiration of the Iran's people to have more freedom, more human rights is legitimate. And we need to support this aspiration. Of course, we do not have to choose instead of the people, the future leader. That's something that it is in the hands of the Iran's population itself. But it was time to provide strong support to the population and also to avoid the development of the program related to the nuclear weapons.
Mr. Prevot, where do we go from here? Europe is again facing an energy issue if this continues for a very long time. Europe is also struggling to find a unified voice with all that is happening with Spain. Where does Belgium stand with that? And what is the way forward?
Of course, I consider that every country has, according to its own sovereignty, the right to have different opinion on the conflicts. And it's not acceptable to be threatened for that. And I'm solidar with my counterpart coming from Spain, of course. We have another opinion, but it is their right to have another way of thinking. But we
so do you think America should be condemned for that trade embargo?
I think that sharing threats to allies is certainly not the best way to manage a difference. We absolutely need to respect each other and try to reinforce a common view in order to answer to the situation we are facing. And frankly speaking, it's quite difficult for a long time for the European Union to speak with one voice on several international issues. We've seen that with Gaza, we've seen that sometime with Ukraine, depending on the attitude of Hungary. But I'm sure that tomorrow, with all the foreign ministers of the EU and of the Gulf region, we will be able to make a common, strong statement. And I think that is really important also to have concrete results on the ground, avoiding de-escalation. And I really condemn the way Iran is responding with many missiles targeting the neighboring countries. It is not acceptable, and we are really in full and total solidarity with the Gulf country and Jordan, of course. And globally in the Middle East, we also support Israel not taking advantage of the situation for violating the territorial integrity of other countries, like Lebanon, for instance. But of course, we consider that having civil casualties in Israel is also not acceptable. So we are really in solidarity with all the countries in the region facing the illegitimate attacks coming from Iran.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maxime Prevot. That's the view here from Brussels as the situation continues to escalate. Europe still trying to find a unified response, trying to come up with a unified response of solidarity with the Spanish government, as well as it has come under fire from the United States for its differing views. But again, it just goes to show that in this alliance, there are multiple voices, multiple views, and it will take some time for everyone to come on board, to come up with, as the Belgian Foreign Minister put it, a unified response, not just words, but actions as well.
Usama bin Javad in Brussels. Thank you.